We are incredibly fortunate this afternoon to have two of the brightest minds in the entertainment industry on stage with us today. If there was a way we could distill their collective knowledge and put it on a computer chip, on a thumb drive, and give it away, we would have one heck of a giveaway here today. Jeff Sagansky was formerly head of CBS Entertainment and Sony Pictures Entertainment, now co-founder of Global Eagle Entertainment and Silver Eagle Acquisition. To his left is Harry Sloan, who was formerly chairman and CEO of MGM Studios and SBS Broadcasting, and is also co-founder of Global Eagle Entertainment and Silver Eagle Acquisition. Let's give them a round of applause just for showing up here today. We're lucky to have their time simply because they know so much about the industry that we live in here, and they're bound by nothing. They have no allegiance to any company except their own. They can say whatever they want, and we're going to listen. I just want to give you a tiny bit of background on the two companies they've started. In May 2011, the pair started Global Eagle Acquisition Corp., which has two in-flight entertainment companies under its belt after raising $190 million through an IPO. After that, they launched Silver Eagle Acquisition Corp. They've raised $325 million. It's burning a hole in their pocket. They are going to use that to fund acquisitions in media entertainment around the world. Gentlemen, I'd like to just set the table this afternoon because we're going to have several panels that follow this that deal with a spectrum of issues. And I thought we could just start out by getting a little bit of your views on the media world in the U.S. and the condition we're in. After speaking with you just a brief time, I've kind of gotten the feeling that you're both a little bearish on U.S. media right now. I know you've got your eyes looking out around the world for your next acquisition. Jeff, tell us just a little bit about what you think the health of the U.S. media industry is these days.
Okay, first of all, let me just say Harry and I basically spent our entire careers managing media and entertainment companies, and now we are investors. So we're not managing anything other than the expectation and the money of the people that are investing with us. So it really changes your outlook as to how you sort of see the world. I'm not responsible for fixing anything. What we've got to do is find the best investment to get into and the best place in the world to put our money. And when I look out at the U.S., what I see is the following. First of all, in context, you've got 4% of the entire value of all publicly listed companies in the United States, basically in this cable, this multi-channel universe. That is, the cable companies and the content companies that produce cable channels. So 4% of the entire stock market is in this sort of cable universe. And essentially what I'm seeing is we're at an inflection point. These companies are valued higher right now in the public markets than they've ever been. And yet if you look at the underlying dynamics of what's happening to their businesses, and that is their cable businesses, it's really not a pretty picture. And the reason is because on the one hand, we've had 15 years of subscriber fee increases for linear channels that has far outstripped CPI. And it really, you've got the average customer in the United States, 101 million people paying $75 a month for their linear television. And then on the other hand, so that's on the subscriber side, and as you know, what has really rocketed all these companies is that they've got dual revenue streams. And on the other side, you've got advertising. And on the advertising, we just went through an upfront, which in my lifetime I've never seen before. You've got a pretty vibrant, recovering U.S. economy, and yet the upfront was down. And this was an incredible thing. And the reason it was down is the advertisers said, hey, we're saving our money for all the digital video opportunities. So, when both parts of your value proposition, your subscriber fees on the one hand, Your advertising, on the other hand, are going to take a hit. It looks like growth is something that you're not going to be able to get from your cable channel. So the question is, for these big media companies, where is the growth? And as Harry and I look around, you've basically only got three ways, and it's all happening right now. One is they're looking at M&A. They're saying, hey, you know what? We've gotten, on the one hand, these content companies, these cable channels are saying, how do I aggregate enough so I can go and demand more subscriber fees out of the MSOs? The MSOs are saying, hey, how do I go and get enough throw weight? That is, how do AT&T and Direct or Comcast combining with Time Warner, how do we get enough throw weight so we can push back when these content companies come in and they ask for increased subscriber fees?
And Jeff, that's happening, sorry for interrupting, but that M&A activity is at full tilt right now, right?
Right.
We've got Comcast, Time Warner, that deal may or may not get approved in
Right.
Washington. We've got Rupert Murdoch making a move for Time Warner, although he's called it off for the moment. What you say is absolutely right. But is that a zero-sum game where we see the distributors combining, and then we see the content companies combining? Does that solve the problem of this stagnant growth, of no growth?
Well, no, a zero-sum game would
And I'm
not.
going to get back to your other two.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
a zero-sum game would not solve the problem, and I think that's the issue, because if both sides of this equation, the distribution side and the content side, become stronger and stronger, and there's a winner and there's a loser, and you're in a zero-sum game because the market caps aren't going up anymore. They've hit an inflection point for whatever reasons Jeff said. Advertising may have hit a wall because it's moving to digital. For whatever reason, if you're locked in what looks like a zero-sum game, you've got to be concerned about the growth of these particular U.S. media companies, because if you're on the losing side of a zero-sum game, that's not good. And if you're on the winning side of a zero-sum game, then the other side kind of regroups to fight again, and the losing side goes to Washington and says, gee, we haven't got enough content companies together, so Time Warner and Fox isn't enough. Let's throw Discovery and AMC in while we're at it and go beat the guy up on the other side. So I think the zero-sum game is something to be concerned about.
So Jeff, you've got two other things that
So
media
so
companies
you've got
should focus on.
M&A. That's one of the things that they're looking to drive growth. Two is international, and international, in which Harry has spent his entire career in very successfully. He can talk to that, but there's huge growth in international, and you see all kinds of money being spent. Viacom just bought a free over-the-air channel in Great Britain, and Discovery.
AMC bought Cello.
Cello was bought by AMC, which is a group of 100 international cable channels. So they're really leaning into that. And then the third area of growth is digital. And digital, I think, you look over the last 10 years of big media companies buying into digital, and pretty much it's been a disaster.
Yeah, I'd like to say, the answer is clearly international. Everyone will talk about international. If you went to News Corp's Investor Day a year ago when they split the companies, I think 70 or 80% of what Chase Carey talked about on his side of the company was, we're going to grow our brands, we're going to grow our channels internationally. But as an investor, if you're not just in a position to be able to extend a Fox brand to a new territory that comes on, you have to decide, what territories do you want to invest in. And when Jeff and I raised the first couple $100 million in 2011, we went out, and yes, I sort of saw myself as an internationalist, having built SBS over the years into 14 countries. And the question was, okay, where's the opportunity? And in 2011, we clearly said, and these PowerPoints come back to haunt you, we clearly said the opportunities then looked to be Turkey, Indonesia, and Brazil. And if you looked at 2011, those were fantastic opportunities, those countries, for media development, because what goes on in the U.S. and what goes on in Western Europe eventually hits those countries as well. Well, here we are. Turkey is a political mess. You can't invest in Turkey right now. It would be extremely risky. Brazil just officially went into recession just last week, so that would have been an issue unless you can get in and out between 2012 and 2013, and no one's that smart. And you're kind of left with Indonesia, which media properties are worth 4 times what they were when we were talking about it, and that would have been the one winner. But that's 1 out of 3, and that's not a very good batting average.
Incredibly risky.
Yeah, 6 months ago, we were brought a deal in Russia, a media deal in Russia. It made a lot of sense, and I was saying, gosh, this thing is going to settle, and I mean, if you think the U.S. and Russia, or the West and Russia are going to go to war, then you get a lot bigger problems than putting, a few $100 million into Russia. This is our new fund, which is $350 million. But anyway, and then he goes into Crimea, and I say, okay, well, that's maybe the end of that. And those people who think the time to invest is when there's blood on the streets are often right. And
Harry, is that opportunity worth the risk?
Well, I mean, that's what you have to assess. So are we better off going back to Brazil, which is actually in a recession, and the Brazil currency is about half what it was when we were looking at it 3 years ago, and think, well, maybe that's more attractive than Russia. But the point is, we just raised this $350 million, having spent, by the way, the end of the first story about where we went wasn't Indonesia, wasn't Turkey, wasn't Brazil. We invested in the airline world, this Global Legal Entertainment, which is a company that supplies Wi-Fi connections and content to the airlines.
I want to come back to that, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a $1 billion market cap now. It's been a really good idea. We found a platform that really didn't exist, which was Wi-Fi and content in the air, and that's a worldwide play, and it made sense.
But Harry, have U.S. companies taken a big enough risk? They've been pretty tepid about what they're doing overseas. Jeff mentioned a few examples of that. You were there when the fall of the wall happened in Eastern Europe with SBS. You know all about risk. And clearly you guys are jumping in feet first now. Is this something that U.S. companies can or should do?
So I would say that, there are those media companies that feel comfortable doing it, and of course the leading one is News Corp. News Corp has, all their growth is, going forward is going to be international. They've invested heavily. They continue to invest heavily. But everybody else is pretty much behind the curve. The incredible thing is that it's not too late. You look around the world, and again, I'll come back to the U.S. In the United States, you've got $69 billion of U.S. advertising on some form of linear TV. And yet you've got $6 billion of advertising in essentially online video. So that $6 billion number, which only 10% of the online, has really taken the legs out, at least from the advertising community, for what's happening. However, that $6 billion in the U.S. doesn't exist around the world. There's very little video advertising that's migrated from linear TV in the rest of the world. So for these companies that are looking, and for Harry and I, that's really where we're looking. We're looking at video advertising online, and we're also looking at over the top. Here in the United States, $5 billion of subscriber fees in these various over-the-top services. Overseas, there's virtually nothing in most of these major territories. And I'm saying, things like Germany and in France, there's just Netflix and a couple of other guys are just getting started now. So there's huge opportunity.
Jeff, what are you saying? You've seen the future and it's right here?
Well, I think what Harry's always subscribed, and he's got a great quote from why don't you tell him Helmut Thom's quote?
The founder of RTL in Germany about 15 years ago, I used to quote him because I was raising money for SBS Broadcasting, which was basically taking American experience and launching TV networks and channels internationally. In those days was Western Europe. But Helmut Thoma said that Germany's future is America's present. So that whatever was happening here would eventually, duplicate itself in Germany. And I guess what Jeff's referring to is these online video services that you put them all together in Germany today. They probably don't have 1 million subs, and here Netflix has 30 million subs. So if that's true, then online services and online video in Germany would be a reasonably safe bet. But the major media companies, and you often say this, Jeff, the major media companies are terrible at digital investments. They just lose, it's a bad business for them because if you have to put a few $100 million out, and then you have to put a few $100 million out the next year, and the next year, which happens with tech companies, these big public companies, they can't afford to do that. That's 20 cents a share or 15 cents a share. I mean, Disney just put $500 million, maybe it goes to $1 billion into Maker, but the next $1 billion that they have to put into that is going to be something they're going to think twice about. And
now,
if they're not,
kidding? Are you kidding here? Will they need to put more money in there? How much more money?
Well, I mean, it's a very big game out there. MCMs, I mean, no one knows what the hell's going on with this MCM stuff. It could go, right? It could go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you've got to be willing to invest and keep investing. And other than Rupert, I don't think anybody, is in a position to do that. So, I mean, Disney's been very good with their acquisitions. The Pixar turned out to be a good acquisition, even though it was seen as overpriced at the time. Marvel turned out to be a good acquisition. They've seen it as overpriced. Lucas probably turned out to be the same thing. But in new media, I can't think of anything that they've done where it hasn't been a total wipeout.
Even at $1 billion, is that a good
Well,
deal?
and I
Well,
want
it's 500 right now, but it's the second 500 is an earnout.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that, you've got to sort of understand about these U.S. media companies, and media companies, really, the big media companies around the world, they're all valued on a basis of a multiple of EBITDA. And in the U.S., the average multiple of EBITDA is 11 times. So if one of these companies puts $100 million, which, is really nothing, into one of these new media ventures, that's basically taking off their market cap 11 times 100 million, $1.1 billion. And there are very few companies that are willing to suffer $1.1 billion decrease in their market cap in order to invest in something that could be worth many, many billions of dollars. They just can't take the short-term hit, which is why essentially the venture capital business can exist. Because you don't have any of the media companies who should be doing this able to do it because of how they're valued.
Let's switch gears here and talk a little bit about a new platform, or digital, which I guess is one of the legs of the stool you had mentioned. Let's talk about your company. Why are two Hollywood executives involved with an airplane Wi-Fi company?
Well, so go back to the first fund that we raised in 2011. We went to the investors, it was a couple $100 million, and we said, we really don't think that there's going to be great growth in traditional media in the U.S. That if we want to take this couple $100 million and fund a new public company, which what it was for.
And by the way, for interrupting, we saw that just in the upfronts. We saw some very anemic growth in you're spot on.
So we said, look, the format of this investment is you put the money into a company and you take it public, and it becomes public. A public stock, you need to feel that the stock's going to double in 3 years. And we basically said, we really don't see that coming in the U.S. out of the traditional media companies. So if it's in the U.S., it's going to have to be a new media platform, one that you hadn't heard of before. More likely we'll invest outside the U.S. because we're traditional media guys. I've built TV networks and cable all over the world, so has Jeff. And that's why I said Indonesia, Turkey, Brazil 3 years ago, which I'm laughing at myself about being wrong 2/3 of it. But so what did we do? We said we need a new media platform in the U.S. And the idea of Wi-Fi to the airlines we saw as a brand new media platform which had tremendous opportunity. There was GoGo. GoGo is kind of a 1.0 technology that is very limited ability to work because it's cell towers and you can only have maybe 10 people on a plane use at the same time. This is satellite technology. So with the airplanes that we equip, you can fly over water and not lose the signal. The bandwidth is scalable because the satellite, just add transponders. So it solves all those issues with GoGo. But more importantly, we said, gee, 3.5 billion airline passengers a year. Often a captive audience for 6, or I just flew back from Munich, 12 hours. And let's face it, the entertainment is pretty, well, compared to what you have on the ground, yeah. And it's, you really get bored and if you can't sleep. So we see that as a tremendous opportunity, and I think we've been rewarded. We put a couple $100 million in this company, issued some more stock. Company now has a market value of $1 billion. The investors who were in it are up 70%.
Home run.
Yeah, home run. Dave Davis, who's the CEO of the company, is sitting in the back. He's going to be on a panel later. But what we found with this idea of Wi-Fi in the air is eventually all the passengers are going to be connected, whether it's to the World Wide Web or whether it's just via the airplane Wi-Fi. And the content, there's not going to be any barriers, and we'll be able to take a business that's now B2B, where a few, where airlines that don't have any money are providing content to passengers, to a B2C business where billions of airline passengers, if they want to watch something on a binge viewing, they can do that. If they want to listen to any music they want, they can do that. I mean, that's going to be a wide open platform. I don't want to overdo the commercial because Dave is going to speak for himself. But anyway, that's what we ended up doing with Global Legal Entertainment.
I'm very curious. We've got just a few minutes left here. As we look at all these new companies that come up, even in our coverage, and I'm sure the audience out there has these questions as well. How much faith or stock do we put in over the top? We've seen these traditional players, almost like piranhas, the OTT guys and Netflix have sort of bitten away piece by piece. Is there a natural limit to what these new players can do? Will TV remain the dominant player 10 years out, 5 years out? We in the media, including me, we always like to get so excited about a new competitor or like a Netflix that comes along. But are those sustainable? I mean, can those businesses overtake the traditional TV business? What's your views on that?
I would say two things. First of all, the whole sort of the history of over-the-top, I mean, Apple was there first. Apple doesn't stumble very often, but they did big time there because they basically went to an a la carte model when it was clear from what happened in Netflix that the over-the-top model that works is a subscription model. So now you're at a place where you've got basically three big over-the-top players. There's more joining, every day. They're joining in niche. They're going for kind of niche audiences, which can work. But I think that it is clear that people don't want to be tied to linear television. And the big question about over-the-top and when it will really, essentially, I guess, replace the model that exists now is, will those cable companies, all those channels that right now sell in a bundle and only exclusively in a bundle, can these niche services, can these over-the-top services basically cut out from the herd one or two of these things so that they're going a la carte? When will you be able to buy HBO Go without subscribing to the entire cable bundle? And when that happens, over-the-top is going to destroy the traditional business that Harry and I grew up with.
Yeah, wow. I think there's another question. So the first question, Jeff is right. I think the answer is that over-the-top will break up the bundle, and it's going to take a long time, and the issue is when.
You say that so matter-of-factly.
But
outside, you're certain that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. I mean, over-the-top it's a better model. I mean, you look at the fact that, the top 50 companies that existed at the turn of the century, 30 of them have disappeared and 15 of them aren't in the top 100 anymore. I mean, change. You can't
Harry,
just sit in those.
When is Philippe?
I disagree with Harry on this, but go ahead. You're on a roll.
When is Philippe and the other kings of content, when are they going to do that? So far, they've broken these networks up into a la carte. So far, they've shown a huge unwillingness to do that.
Yeah, because 80% of their market cap, or 90% of their, in that case, 90% of their market cap is in the cable networks. They'll do whatever it takes to protect the product as long as they can. But I do think that over-the-top is going, I mean, they may capture the over-the-top, they may be players in the over-the-top, and their view ultimately is going to be control content, and where the content plays over-the-top, or whether it plays on Comcast, or where it plays, they're going to come out the same. So it's not that Viacom's going to go away, or that CBS is going to go away, or that News Corp is going to go away. It's just that the bundle is going to change. That's all I'm.
You sound so confident
about
that.
Well, but what's, I'm confident of that. But what I'm actually more interested in is the bundle developed over time here. So now we're at the point where the average cable bill is $75. But in Europe, ARPU is 20 euros or 25 euros. In Mexico, it's 300 pesos. In India, it's 100 rupees, $2. Is the bundle going to develop outside the United States the way it developed here, or is it going to get short-circuited by over the top.
What's the
outside
answer?
the United States? I really don't know the answer. It'll be different in different countries. I mean, Australia is supposedly spending $100 billion developing their broadband infrastructure with everybody's going to have 5 meg or something like that. In that case, yeah, I would think that the over-the-top is going to be fantastic. I think it depends on what people are going to, what countries are going to be investing in their infrastructure, have a lot to do with it.
Jeff, you
know, I basically, I grew up in an era where television was free, and I remember the first time I ever subscribed to cable, I got 30 channels plus HBO, and I paid $7.50. This was in the mid-'80s. And I was outraged that I had to pay $7.50 to watch TV. Now I'm paying $75, as is 101 million American households. And on the one hand, I say, never in my lifetime has there been as much choice, has television been as good as it is now. Everybody in this room has 5 shows which are their favorites, and a lot of them don't overlap. So, you know, we paid for that. We paid the highest cable bill of any country in the world other than Australia. In Australia, there's only 22 million people, so you know, they don't have enough money to afford all this great programming. Here we do. So it's a trade-off, but I don't believe, unlike what Harry thinks, I mean, I think these big cable companies and the MSOs have circled the wagon. It is going to be really hard to break one of these guys off from the herd. There's just too much at stake.
and Jeff, that means less change. I mean, that means, you know, everyone's kind of.
That means that there's going to be changes, you know, there'll be changes essentially on the, you know, on the margins. There'll be a Netflix that comes in and challenges HBO, and there'll be somebody that says, you know what, I'll take the over-the-air television for free and Netflix, and I won't subscribe at all to cable, and that's what you're seeing slowly happening, particularly with the younger, you know, the younger audience.
But here's the economic equation. Okay, so we're sitting in the room at Time Warner, and we're trying to decide whether we're going to break out HBO. All right, HBO makes $1.7 billion, $1.8 billion a year. Let's call it $2 billion, and let's say its value at 11 multiple is $20 billion. Okay, in order to get people to buy Time Warner stock at $80 or wherever it is now, they got to believe it's going to 120. Otherwise, Rupert's going to get the company. So they've got to find a way to make HBO go from being worth $20 billion to $30 billion. Now, are they going to get to $30 billion faster by this sort of zero-sum game and trying to beat the shit out of Comcast and Time Warner, who are now becoming more powerful than they are because they're going to get the first big merger done because Washington is going to let that happen? Are they going to get there faster by getting 50% more out of Comcast and therefore 50% more out of the consumer? Or are they going to get there faster, getting people to pay, I don't know, $2, $3, and you multiply that out, you get to a $30 billion market value faster. So who's got the balls in that room to make that decision? Probably nobody that'll be in that room in Time Warner, in my opinion. But if it were Rupert, he might actually make that decision. So I think it's going to be who's making the decision to break out and how they're going to do it. And it's going to have to do with, you know, big geopolitical, big money issues that are at the very top of the food chain. It's not going to be about, gee, we want more people to be able to see it because they'll like the shows better, or the New York Times review will be better, or anything like that, or it's Netflix is cool, so we want to be cool. It's going to have to do with the big money kind of issue that I just laid out for you.
I'm on the board of Scripps and Stars, and from a fiduciary obligation, Harry, I hope you're wrong.
Gentlemen, looks like we're running out of time here. Any last thoughts for the crowd about the U.S. media world or opportunities abroad?
As far as opportunities abroad, they're amazing. It's where the opportunities are. I continue to like Latin America. I like India. All the focus is on China, but you know, China's GDP is 3 times India. Per capita, it's 3 times India. I think India's going to get off the ground. I like this new government. I do think that the Russia thing will settle down, but it's going to take longer than I thought. I like
Patience. Is that's what you need overseas, right?
Yeah, well, you one or two things. I mean, there are some places where, you know, in Latin America traditionally has been this way. You get in and you can make a lot of money, but you got to know when to get out. I mean, this point about Brazil, nobody would have expected Brazil to be sitting there in recession, you know, at this point in time. Of course, nobody would have expected Brazil to get beat by Germany 10-1 in the semifinal of the World Cup, 7-1. But you go. I think that's, I would absolutely look internationally. I would, other than Eastern Ukraine, I think probably the rest of the world is worth paying attention to, and then Eastern Ukraine will be later.
Jeff?
I leave it to my partner, he said it all.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff and Harry, thank you so much. Yeah, that was great.